Hello, good morning. I'm going to read from Living Clean again. This is the book. If you want to see the cover so you can get yourself a copy. Today's chapter is called Keeping It Real. And we all need to re-energize ourselves sometimes, physically, emotionally and spiritually. We separate these parts of ourselves so we can talk about them more easily, but really they are all connected. Just as we may be much more emotionally sensitive when we are physically tired, we find that when we are emotionally exhausted, we're prone to get physically sick. When we are spiritually exhausted, we can feel deeply insecure. Some of us are at our best when we are moving and busy. Others of us recharge when we're alone and quiet. It may be as simple as sitting down for a brief meditation or showing up at a meeting. Reaching out might be the best thing we can do for ourselves and for those around us. Seeing the program work in another person's life affirms our commitment and gives us hope. At 10 years clean, I hit a wall, said a member. For me, the turnaround was a group of newcomers whose passion and intensity woke me up. It was the same passion that kept me clean in the beginning. We can recognise the change in others before we see it in ourselves. Some of us thrive on working with newcomers. We only keep what we have by giving it away, but we don't know what we have until we start to give. In the moment, dealing with someone who is struggling or in pain, we find resources within us that we never knew about. When we see someone really get it and take off, it gives us a gratitude we never thought possible. We don't get to choose who gets recovery. It's not up to us to choose who to help. It can be hard sometimes to watch the spark land, flash and go out over and over again. When we show up and do our part, the message gets carried. When I'm helping someone through the steps, I feel like an instrument of my higher power's will, a member said. I'm not in charge. My responsibility is just to stay close. The work we have done to build our fellowship means that a lot more experience, strength and hope is available to newer people than back in the day. But the skills we develop helping an NA community get started may be different from those we need to maintain unity and stability. Once that community is established, we are liable to feel left out or left behind. The trouble with being called a dinosaur is that we know they are extinct. Staying involved helps us to grow and requires us to change. It may sound odd, but we are also responsible to let ourselves be outgrown. It can be a challenge when we've been sponsoring someone for a while to accept when they decide to move on. We take comfort in the thought that if they are taking responsibility for their recovery, we did our job. As a fellowship too, we can see our growth. Those of us who have been here since the very early days can see it in a particular way that is bitter and sweet. The fact that NA changes and the patterns and habits at the meeting are different can be an excuse to leave. It's another reservation we couldn't predict. When we stay involved with a living, growing and changing fellowship, we don't notice so much, but if we move or take a break, the changes can be startling. NA changes. People come and go, but we change too. The time we have available, our relationships with others, the way we're comfortable serving or participating, they all change naturally over time, over the course of our lives. When the steps are an ongoing part of our lives, we are called on pretty regularly to examine our lives and see what is working and what can be improved. It's natural that we will take a hard look sometimes at NA2. We consider our fellowship, how we see ourselves in it and our beliefs about it. It can be very uncomfortable and frightening when we give ourselves the space to examine our commitment. We can be honest about it, just like any other relationship. When our beliefs and perceptions are changing, we can experience pain and confusion that leave us feeling isolated. We can be cut off from others, but also from ourselves and our higher power. Sharing with others at these moments is critical. It can be surprising how welcome that sharing is. When we are honest and real, we connect with people. When we have a lot of clean time, we can get caught up in what we think we are supposed to share in meetings. When the message we carry is an honest reflection of our experience rather than what we imagine other people want to hear. The truth can set all of us free. These are many ways to think about our disease. Some say that addiction is a severe case of the human condition. We struggle with the same fears and insecurities that everyone else does, but we experience them to a degree that makes us willing to die to escape them. Other members say that addiction is a shame-based disease. At the core of our disease thinking is the belief that something is wrong with us. When we are looking at the world or at ourselves through eyes of shame, everything we see is further evidence that we are wrong or bad, or that we cannot be restored to sanity. We describe our struggle differently as our relationship to it changes. Some people say that addiction is a disease of nostalgia. We glamorize the past and terrorize the present. We may not recognize it in ourselves, but when we hear people we think of as newcomers complaining that it's not like it used to be, about what seems to us to have been the recent past, we can start to find the humour in it. Something special happens when we first get clean. Our desperation and the total commitment we make in the beginning combine to create a very precious and important time in our lives. It's never the same as our first home group, our first real connection to a sponsor, or that initial group of friends we ran with in early recovery. But the fact that it's not the same doesn't mean it's not as good. A member shared, "When I let myself approach my recovery like a newcomer, I don't struggle so much with the differences between how it is and how I think I remember it was. I can be present today without getting lost in nostalgia or comparison. Allowing our recovery to change as we change can be difficult, but it's what makes staying in NA possible and productive. The things we do when our NA community is small are the basics. Just like in our personal recovery, if we get away from the basics, we may have a hard time getting back to them. Meetings get complacent too. When we get lazy, the message gets watered down. When we see that happening in our groups, we have a responsibility not to complain or chastise, but to get busy. Sometimes starting step studies or literature discussions can help bring the focus of meetings back to recovery. Some of the most important work we do is at our home group. Participation at our home group makes it feel like it's really home. I wish I could say my actions are selfless, one member confessed, but deep down I know that my goal is to keep my home group alive so that I can keep coming back. We feel good about meetings, where we feel loved and accepted and where we can be useful. Little things like calling members when they don't show up can really reinvigorate a home group. Not giving up on each other matters, whether or not we are just getting clean. We teach by example. When we share honestly and openly from the heart about recovery, we carry a more powerful message than we ever do when we're preaching or lecturing. NA is different from place to place and at different stages of growth. There is no model of the recovery and fellowship. In some places, families are very involved. In some places, we take members into our homes to detox. In some places, tough love is the norm, and we tell people to sit down and shut up. In other places, we encourage one another to talk it out. The principles are consistent, but how we practice them can vary widely. The key is that we practice them, that our unity comes first, and that we keep our focus on our primary purpose to carry the message to the addict who still suffers. Politics and popularity distract us from our purpose. When NA members forget that our personal recovery depends on NA unity, both are in jeopardy. NA communities do sometimes wither and die. It's a tragedy we can learn from. We have a tendency to believe that things which are free to have no value when in fact they may be precious beyond any measure. When we recognise that our fellowship is in trouble, we must take loving action. Our lives depend on it. There we go, that's the reading for today. That really spoke to me. I hope it did you as well, anybody who's listening. That's a Living Clean book. Get yourself a copy. I think I said that at the beginning. But yeah, just for today, do not pick up no matter what. No drink, no drugs. It includes that nicotine, vaping, and wherever possible, no mind or mood altering medication. Thanks for listening. Enjoy your day.